right. Welcome to episode 2 of the Homegrown Libertarians podcast. We have two lovely ladies. I don't know where the other three are, but hey, we could talk. We could talk all we want. It's an hour, so we're libertarians. We're very talkative. So, um, uh, I want to start off with I know I said it last week about how I got into the libertarian movement / party, and I'll reiterate every show or whatever how I got in. Um, let me tell my story, and then I'll pass it on to whoever wants to tell their story next. Um, it was I had just got out of in '88 I supported Dukakis Benson. I was a Democrat, and very active in politics as a young age. My mom got me interested back in '84, actually, when Jesse Jackson ran for president, and at the ripe young age of 12. She started me early. She wanted me to be a congressperson, and I was just like, no, no. So what happened was I had just got out of boot camp, and I was I didn't want to go back. It's a long story. I have to tell it sometime, but I got out of the service because there are a lot of shady people, obviously, anywhere, especially in government. So I went home back in Colorado, and I was flipping through the channels because I was really disgusted with the Democrats, and I was really disgusted with the Republicans as well. So I was searching through the channels, and I, lo and behold, discovered this channel called C-SPAN. All right. I didn't know. I never flipped through, like the 200 channels at that time that we had on cable. So I'm watching the Libertarian Party convention. I think it was in DC that year. It was in '91. And this is when the conventions were in off-year conventions because of the ballot access. We need an early start on the ballot access. And I'm sitting there watching a black gentleman giving a speech. His name happened to be Richard Body. Richard Body was talking about ending the war on drugs, lower taxes, reestablishing our Second Amendment rights, and just going on and on and on. And I'm like, I like this guy. And so the next day, I went through the phone book, the actual phone book, when we actually had phone books, and looked for the Colorado Libertarian Party. So I called, and there actually was somebody in the office, and he said, "Hey, we're meeting at the Colorado Convention Center downtown. Come out and introduce yourselves." I was like, "All right, that's cool." And so I went down, and we went back to the headquarters, and he gave me some stuff to read about the Libertarian Party. And at one time, I used to have the keys to the office. I used to check messages and stuff like that, as a volunteer, and started reading all these books that they had in the office. The first two books I read on libertarianism was Economics in One Lesson and Libertarianism in One Lesson. So,
perfect, yeah. Those are great books.
Yeah, yes. So, and then after that, I just started reading more and more. My mind was just so soaked up with all this new stuff, and that's how I got in. So,
That's awesome.
And here you are today, and we haven't scared you away
and
yet.
here I am today. Well, No, you haven't scared me away. I'm still active on the state level. I'm not active on the national level. I think, my time and focus should be on the state and local. Whatever national does, but, I'm more concentrated on the state level.
Makes sense.
Perfect.
So who would
Lucy,
like
you
to
wanna
go
go
next?
I guess I could go next. Gosh, I grew up a Mormon girl. So honest to goodness, like the 13th prophet of the Mormon church is my third cousin. So
Whoa.
so my mom was all into that stuff. And then once I started reading about that, of course, I freed myself. But one of my mom's really good friends growing up, and I was in like dance with her daughter, this couple, the Hartmans, I really have them to thank for introducing me to libertarianism, in my teenage years. And I really didn't know what it meant. I just knew that they were the coolest people I knew, and they were libertarian. And so, hearing these, just middle-aged suburban couple talking about, how, they didn't actually say sex work is work, but they basically said, why are we, marriage is prostitution. So why don't we just legalize prostitution in general? And this was the wife saying that, of course, and talking about how silly it is that, you can eat broccoli, but you can't eat cannabis and marijuana. And so I just from an early age knew that. And then luckily the guy that I married, my husband Dorn, who's somewhere around there, we've been married for 30 years, and he was very libertarian minded. I think he's always been a libertarian, but he didn't have a real label for it. So even early into our marriage, we were going to libertarian meetings, which is freaking awesome because sometimes I was the only lady there. The other wives and girlfriends didn't come unless it was their house that it was being hosted at. So that was kind of interesting, always being, kind of the lone female voice. And I ran for office in, I think it was 95 the first time. And that was a really interesting experience. And again, kind of put it on the hold. I have 10 kids. So when I ran the first,
the Mormonism, right?
yeah, total brainwashing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I am one of the most polite people you will know. It's an awesome culture to grow up in. It's almost like being Canadian, but being American at the same time, because I'm so polite. but yeah, the brainwashing did take. And then I just kind of put it on hold for a few years. And then I ran again in 2016 and 2018 for United States Senate. So I've had kind of that up and down journey depending upon my life about how active I could be or not be. But of course, I always voted Libertarian and read a whole bunch of books and enjoyed going back to college at an older age and really giving hell to the economics professors, since that was my second major. And they hated having this 40-something-year-old woman just totally telling all the kids in the class that everything they were talking about was BS. It's like, I live this, these kids may believe you, but let's really talk about this. So anyway, that's kind of my libertarian story.
That's awesome.
Tag, you're it.
I'm going to start using like Mormons or the Canadians of America. Like
I just made that up right now because I thought, damn, I'm so polite. My Canadian friends will like apologize to me for things that they anticipate may happen next year.
Oh my God, that's wow. Yeah, so I'm Avens O'Brien, and I am a second-generation libertarian. So my journey into libertarianism comes from my parents. So both of my parents were active in both the objectivism circles before the LP. So like they were, like the 60s, it was like objectivism. They'd go to like Ayn Rand lectures and Nathaniel Branden lectures and things like that.
Cool.
And then like both of my parents got into like when they heard that there was this thing going on in Denver with a libertarian party convention. And so both of my parents, at the time, let's see, it was 19, I'm trying to remember the years, like, so I don't age my parents wrong, but in 1971, my dad was a 19-year-old college student going around college campuses, like driving Tony Nathan, our VP candidate, around.
No way,
like,
that's so cool.
Speeches at college campuses and stuff like that. And then my mother they weren't together at the time; they like hadn't met yet, but they were both doing libertarian activism in New England. So my mother always says like she got purged from the objectivist movement when she like helped a bunch of her friends like co-founded the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, and so like my mother's, so the funny thing is like both my parents were involved there. My dad had a libertarian like radio show, like on like
That's
college
so
radio,
cool.
like college radio in the 70s, right? So my dad had this like little college radio show, and my mother was doing her activism. And in 1974, my grandfather decided he wanted to run for office, and he was going to run as for Congress in New Hampshire as a Republican. And my mother was like, well, but you're a libertarian. And he was like, well, show me this libertarianism thing. So she convinced him to run as a libertarian. And
That's freaking awesome.
It was, so 1974, like my parents, so my dad volunteered in that campaign. They met, they like fell in love. In 1975, they got married and had my brother. So, I named my brother Ragnar because they were both Ayn Rand freaks. So, this is like, that's like where it came from, right? And so like over the 70s and 80s, like my parents were all about like trying to like host salons of like people who just think differently about stuff. So they had like Murray Rothbard over for dinner and all these different like
so jealous.
It's funny. I wasn't like even born yet, but I hear all the stories, right? And so like I hear about the heyday, right? And Timothy Leary being at the conventions and things like that. And so like it's funny because I grew up with that context. Like my parents were all about like new ideas. So like, there wasn't a word for like the peaceful parenting movement. My parents were like, we're not going to spank our kids. And like, they were involved in new age religion stuff. And like, my mother likes to say old age religion because it was prior to Christianity, but like, Wicca and Druidism and things like that. So like my mother's a Druid high priestess. My father's a Wiccan priest, like, but they're also very, very libertarian. And so my parents were running for, state rep. My mother ran for governor of New Hampshire as a libertarian. My dad ran for state rep and other things. I think my mother says that my dad ran for sheriff, and my dad doesn't remember that, but whatever. But like, so
it might have happened.
So like, then I'm like raised by these parents who were like, oh, and we're also going to like homeschool our kids. And at the time, like unschooling wasn't a thing, but like, it wasn't like, there wasn't a movement, but my mother was like, I want them to kind of guide their own education. And so, that's where it came from. Like, that's what I grew up in. And so I was born in 1987. And so I just like, that's the environment in which I was like, it was, molded. And so, like the first time I realized like our context as libertarians, like I knew that my parents believed in freedom and my mother explained like the non-aggression principle to me. And my mother used to explain that we were more liberal than liberals and more conservative than conservatives. Like she just loved to say that. Like it really confused me at the time, but like she loved to mess with people like that. So she'd be like, oh no, we're more liberal than the Democrats and we're more conservative than the Republicans. I don't understand what that means. But in 1996, it was the election for oh my God, it was Clinton versus Dole, and Harry Brown was the LP's nominee. Mm-hmm. And I remember like, I'm like 9, right? So like kids in my neighborhood are talking about our parents, like it's New Hampshire too, so it's like very political. And like kids in my neighborhood are talking about like, oh, my mom's going to vote for President Clinton, and my mom's going to vote for Mr. Dole. And I remember like coming home and being like, Mom, which one are we voting for? And Mom was like, we're voting for Harry Brown. And I was like, okay, we're voting for Harry Brown. We're at Harry Brown household. And so like, I'm like on the playground with kids being like, oh, well, we're voting for Harry Brown. He's going to be the next president. And then I remember like the day after the election, like the newspaper came out and like, and I looked at like the vote totals because they were in like the top right-hand corner of the Union Leader. And I was like, whoa, we did not do well. and it was like the first realization that like, we're a third party and we're not a popular one. And it was like the first time that I understood that like the ideas and values that my family held, that I held, like weren't popular. I was like, why wouldn't these be popular? And so, right. And so from that, like, I would go with my mother to things and LP events, and I liked to pay attention to that stuff, but I wasn't as actively engaged by myself until after 9/11, when Bush decided to do the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq, and both of those things, like I was raised very anti-war, and just that really pushed me into like, I want to go to protests. I want to be involved in this. And so like, I would say 2003, I just became very, very active as a libertarian. And so at the time, 2002, 2003, I was 2002, I was 13, 14. And so like, I got really engaged in that. Wow. Am I doing the math right? No, 14. I was I was 14 in 2002. And so like I got so engaged in not just libertarian politics, but anti-war politics, which include the anti-war left. So I had a lot of friends. Like it was interesting being like, oh look, we have all these things in common. We both hate war. Isn't that great? And then like in 2008, my anti-war left just left me, and I was like, what the hell? Because it's 2008. They're like, it's Obama. We're fine now. But from that, like, I became very active at that point. 2004, I volunteered on the Bed and Arent campaign. And then 2008, 2006, I ran for vice chair of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. So I was vice chair of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire from 2006 to 2008. And I've just been involved since. But like, those were the things, like they're like, raised and molded in this particular environment, and then going into like, then the war just made me like, no, like the government is bad. No, it should not be bombing people across the world. Really just made me active. I was like dragging my mother to things for the first time. Like mom would, usually be the one dragging me to stuff. She'd be like, hey, we're going to be burning a UN flag in Veterans Park, because that's what we did in the 90s. But for me, like, I was like, we got to go to this anti-war protest. And so I actually marched in New York City in 2004. I marched on the Republican National Convention with a bunch of libertarians with Ben Eric, like, just protesting the war. And I was, in 2004 I was 17, so it was like this big deal, go to New York City, like with my brother. Exactly. And march. It was great. So anyway, that's how I got into the movement.
Oh, I love that. I am so completely enamored with your story, and hope that someday my children will tell their story with the same enthusiasm, instead of being like, yeah, my mom's a crackpot.
I could do that too. My parents are nuts, but they're wonderful nuts. Like, it's a good kind of crazy. It's like a Willy Wonka crazy.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, my kids say the same thing. Ever since I've been married, I got married in 2000. And in 2004, we started taking them to libertarian events. I was the scheduling coordinator for Aaron Russo when he ran in 2004. Cool. I was when Aaron actually passed away, my son just wept, because he was a great family friend. Even after the convention and whatnot, we always stayed connected. And then when Bernard won the nomination, I was the Illinois guy for the Bernard campaign. And then in 2006, Aaron Russo came out with his documentary, America, Freedom to Fascism. We went up to St. Charles, Illinois, to see the pre-screening of the movie, and that theater was packed. I don't think they could have packed more people in that theater. That theater held like 800 people. It was just nice seeing Aaron again, and unfortunately, that was the last time we got to see Aaron Russo, and that inspired me with a brief campaign to run for the Libertarian Party VP nomination. I did that briefly and was very discouraged. So I dropped that in early 2008. I went to 5 or 6 conventions, mostly on my own dime, and took my kids with me and stuff like that. And I mean, my kids have always been like, oh yeah, we're libertarians, blah blah blah. So my son even says to his friends, oh, I'm not a Democrat or Republican, I'm a libertarian. So, and he's 19 now. So it's great to pass that down to your kids, because and hopefully they'll continue that thing. And anyway, I think the second question would be, what are your experiences as women in the party? What have you experienced, positive, negative, or indifferent? And then the third question will be, what do we do to bring more wonderful ladies like you two into the party? So,
just like us.
I think it's possible that my experience as a married woman may be different than, Avens, are you still single?
No, I'm with a partner, but I spent plenty of time single in the libertarian movement, so I can speak to that.
I was Mormon, so I got married at 19 and started popping babies out. But I will say that I was so libertarian, and so was my husband, that we got married without a state-issued marriage license.
Ooh.
So we found a local Christian pastor that did a marriage contract with us. He's pretty famous.
Rebel.
Yeah, because fuck the government on every level. And what I'm doing, I'm sorry, I hesitated because I'm playing all the times that my kids have said this. And of course, I don't reprimand them because it's the truth. And if they're going to use the F word, then they should use it judiciously. And that would be a good time to use it.
Right.
But, as a married woman, having a real big former football player by my side, I have experienced zero sexual harassment in the Libertarian Party. And I like to think that that's a result of, the type of person that's a libertarian, believes in the non-aggression principle. And, they get the single men in our community so often get accused of not having the personality or the social skills to pick up women. So maybe they're just trying extra hard to be nice. I don't know. But I've never personally, I can't think of any time when I've ever experienced sexual harassment. But that could be also because I'm married, and I'm married to a guy that looks like he could, kind of like turn you into a pretzel and toss you out the window as he drove by. So that might color my experience. And just because having so many kids, I'm not this, I've got 10 kids, and I've had 10 kids in 22 years. So I'm not the sort of person that's going to be pursued that's the one that I want. That's the big payment that I want to take on. Let me see if I can win that one away from her husband. So no, I've never experienced any sexual harassment in there. When you're with your single years, did you experience anything?
I would say that, I'm not married. My partner and I have been together for 8 years. And I would say that one of the biggest things with being with him. So my partner is Judd Weiss, who's a well-known photographer. He ran for VP with John McAfee in 2016.
Which I voted for them, by the way, both.
Thank you.
I'm a McAfee girl. Yeah. I was wanting to be part of his Clone Wars. I've got my cardboard, but he's incarcerated right now from what I hear.
But the thing is that Judd is well known enough in the LP that, and not just the LP, but the greater libertarian movement, that I do still get, I've had sexual harassment, but if we're together for something, if we're in the same room and he's around, I typically people don't mess with me because they don't want to mess with him. They do not want to he's a well-known photographer, and he's also willing to speak his mind. And so I don't think anyone ever wants to be oh shit, I just made Judd Weiss mad. And I recognize that. I recognize that's protective. Yeah. It's not that Judd can beat your ass. It's that Judd can destroy your reputation. And so that has been extremely valuable in terms of being protected. But one of the things that I noticed is when I started doing a lot of libertarian events, my best friend was this gay boy. So we just, we're teenagers and he's gay, but he's always with me. So what is our relationship? And so I had kind of this gay boy protector for many years, but I still noticed I would just notice some men are just, oh, she's cute and, and just interested in asking me out and whatever. And that's fine. I don't mind even socially awkwardly asking me out or things like that.
Exactly.
But I've definitely experienced some minor sexual harassment. And I've had a few bigger occasions. Cause as I was mentioning before we started recording and stuff, I've had the other kind of sexual harassment that has nothing to do with my sexuality or being at a conference or anything like that. And it's not Libertarian Party based, but in the Liberty movement, I've written a number of controversial articles, and I've been known as a controversial figure. And so there have been other people who have attacked me, and a lot of their attacks were sometimes sexually charged or years ago, Chris Cantwell made a video featuring me and two of my friends talking about us being horrible people and degenerate libertarian females or whatever. And when that happened, like, you know, I got like, some people came to my defense and said like, wow, that was, you know, totally inappropriate. But a lot of like the commentary was very like gender charged and very sexually charged, you know, like I got a bunch of people on Twitter, like first telling me that like I deserve to be raped, and then like other ones telling me I was too ugly to rape, and like, you know, just the slew,
Right.
you know, just like things that make me very glad that I don't like publicly post my address out. You know what I mean? Like there's just little things, like I'm glad that there's, you know, things that kind of anonymize me a bit. But I would say that like one of the biggest things I've noticed, and so like Lucy, you and I both have the experience of like, we've been in the libertarian movement for a long time.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've noticed that encourages me and makes me feel really good is the like percentage of women at events from like the 90s to now. Like, you know,
like there is a percentage.
Yeah, like
it's like whole numbers.
Right. Like when I was a kid, it was like, you know, I would go with my mother, and the only other women who were generally there were usually romantically attached to one of the men. A lot of times the man was the more active person. And sometimes the women were very active, but it would be like, you know, another woman with her kids, and like, and, you know, and then like, it would be, you know, 3 or 4 women at an event with 20 or 30 people and or more, you know, and it'd be like very few women and lots of men. And as time has progressed, I've been really encouraged by like how many more women I've seen enter the movement and the space. When I was vice chair of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, the board at the time, we were like chair, vice chair, secretary, like that. It was, the board was half female. Like that's what I remember about it. Is like we had like a entirely half female board, and I think like maybe the next year, I think we had like, you know, 4 out of 6 of the seats. Like, so like that was so encouraging. And like all the events that I'd go to would be like more and more women. And and even now, like I did the numbers, I actually meant to look it up right before this podcast, but I did the numbers on our national convention this year, the in-person, or not just the in-person convention, the entire convention. I went through the delegate list, and I actually manually looked through all like 1,000 delegates, and I did, next to their names, I either columned definitely female, definitely male, or I'm not sure, because like some names you just don't know. And so I went through and I did it's very unscientific. I did it, 1, making assumptions about what names meant, and 2, I did it, you know, very fast. But I found that like it was like 22% female attendance at our convention, and I'm really sad that it was only 22% because I want it to be more. But like that's way better than 2%, which was like which is how I feel like it was back in the day, you know. So it's funny because like I definitely think there's a whole lot more improvement to be had, but at the same time, I'm just like, God, there's so many more women, and we talk to each other. So like I've had instances in which like someone hasn't sexually harassed me, and I've always been fine with some guy, and then a friend of mine will be like, I'm actively uncomfortable around him. I'm like, oh, what happened? And she's like, oh, he like put his hand up my skirt. And I'm like, whoa. And so there's things I learn about people because the women, like we talk and we're a community. And so even when I haven't had experiences, and I've had people be harassing, and I've had like online trolls, I will say that the LP, I've been very happy that I've had less issues in the LP than a lot of women report. Like a lot of other women will be like, oh, I don't know what to do about this. And I'm someone who's like protecting them and advocating for them. But I'm lucky that I have a lot of spoons to do that because I'm protected by a male partner that people respect. Also I have a personality that that causes people to you know, not want to mess with me. And then I'm able to like try to use that to protect other people, because I definitely see other people other women getting harassed or you know, abused or whatever, and I want to do more to help them.
That, you know, that really brings up an interesting thing, because I think about, you know, so many of the men here locally. I mean, we're just all family. They're all my brothers. Brothers in Liberty, you know, just really good quality people. I'm so lucky to be in Indiana. I'm sure that's true in New Hampshire and Illinois too. But Indiana has just always been really active in the National Party. We've done a great job. And I think about having 10 children, 7 of them are girls, 3 of them are boys. And I think a couple of things. One, the challenge of raising boys in a society where a false accusation with little to no merit can be a real thing that can stop the rest of your life. And, also on the other side, how do we raise strong women who develop their own voice? Because you and I won't always be around to protect these young ladies. We won't be able to stand in the gap. And they may not have a partner, male or female, that can help them and stand up there for them. So I think that's a real challenge. And I think that's a challenge on a couple of different levels, not only the sexual harassment level, but also the gang and bully mentality that so much of society has, where they're might makes right. And if you're voting red or you're voting blue, which team are you on? And if you're not on one of those teams, then the other two teams both attack you. I think that's a real challenge. Chris, how old are your kids?
My children are, my daughter will be 22 in December and my son will be 20 in February. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've got daughters and sons that same age, and it's a real challenge. Now, do your kids go to events with you, or?
They used to back in the between 2004 and about 2012-ish. They used to go to like LP conventions. We even had like an anti-war rally back in 2009 that my kids attended with me, and it was great. I just tried to instill like basic libertarian values. Okay, so and my son, I think his biggest problem is that he's not around enough people who think like us,
right,
and stuff. Especially he's at that age where he wants a girlfriend, and
I got one of those
he's
too.
He's at the age he's like, how comes girls don't like me? And it's just. I'm just like it takes time. It really does. Relationships evolve. They're different. I mean, I wasn't really interested in women until after high school because of the school that I went to. Girls were they're drama, big time drama. So I was like, I got enough drama at home. Okay, I don't need a woman on my arm or something to have that same kind of drama. So I waited until after high school to start dating and whatnot. So I was more concerned about my friends and hanging out with my buddies and stuff like that in high school. So but I said, I tried to, and my daughter's always been like boy crazy. I mean, she just as soon as a guy pays attention to her hormones just go.
Yep.
And she, I mean, we could talk about that. I mean, that kind of situation on a different podcast, because it is really interesting. Raising children is interesting. Just being married is interesting enough. Raising children is even more interesting. So,
remind your son, because you were saying that like he wasn't involved, but he's gotten less engaged in libertarianism as he's like wanting a girlfriend or whatever. That's good. It's good that he's doing that, actually, because libertarianism is not a substitute for a personality, and a lot of libertarian men don't know that. Like a lot of, I know so many, like actually, so 2015, I wrote an article for the Libertarian Republic, which went kind of viral. And it was called 12 Reasons You're Not Getting a Libertarian Lady. And it was me writing about
I reminded that.
Yeah, and so it was me writing about like why like a lot of guys have trouble like connecting with a woman here in the scene, or just a libertarian man who just can't find a lady, right? Like not enough libertarian minded women, or just not being able to connect with women. And I my list is I'm proud of my list. I think my list is good. It's like the right level of it's kind of funny and playful, but it's also kind of harsh and hey, you need to know these things. But like one of those facts is like libertarianism is not a substitute for a personality. And also like
Right.
you don't need to, so I mean, I'm all about like applying libertarianism to my life, walk the walk, right? Walk the talk. But I made a comment about how, like, you know, you don't need to hate Avatar just because it has an environmentalist message, and you don't need to love Atlas Shrugged just because you love Atlas, like, because you love the story. Like, the movie was objectively bad, and also like, and Avatar was an objectively good movie. Like, and it doesn't mean you have to like those things just because other people like them. But like, don't use, like, you don't have to put everything through a lens of libertarianism in terms of like enjoying art or enjoying music or enjoying anything else. And that's something that I try to coach younger guys about. And so I'll just be like, hey, like, you know, like, volunteer at an animal shelter. Like, you can meet lots of girls that way. Like, you know, there's lots of ways to like, you know, not like, don't go hunting for women, because also we know when we're being hunted and it's uncomfortable. But you know, but you know, cultivate a personality or interests that don't require that someone like agree with you 100% of the time on your, let's say, your political beliefs or anything else. So, you know, I think you got a good son there and he's going to be fine. But I'm just, you know, that's something I noticed in the libertarian movement is like less about sexual harassment and just complete lack of social skills. And that lack of social skills, sometimes abetting like sexual harassment because somebody doesn't know where to stop. And then also other people don't know how to reel them in, you know?
Oh, great observations. And you know,
when I got married, my wife wasn't libertarian, so I wouldn't say she was converted per se, but she was more, you know, attractive to what I was saying throughout, you know, throughout the beginnings of our marriage, and then she became just an all-out libertarian after that. She goes, "Oh, I understand, blah blah blah," you know, and you know, it's just, you know, me just telling her, you know, this is what libertarians believe in, blah blah blah. So, and she's a all-out libertarian. I would probably say she's more like Republican, little conservative. I mean, but it was like she didn't really have a pigeonholed viewpoint on stuff. She goes, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense too. Oh, that makes sense. You know, oh, I don't understand that. Could you reiterate that for me?" and stuff like that. So, you know, I got lucky. So because
you did, because so many marriages break up.
I dated I dated liberal girls and conservative girls prior to that, and they just didn't really understand. So I really lucked out on this one, and it's been 20 years. So
yeah, congratulations, man. We're on 30, and I think the reason that we've been able to stay married is because our political beliefs are very closely in alignment. And I left Mormonism years ago. Part of it was having that big, strong guy next to me, because the Mormons will follow you forever. They're not as bad as Scientologists, but you know, I can remember my mom. Yeah, I can remember my mom sending like the local, like literally in the Mormon religion, every man has a companion. So like my dad had a companion, and that was another elder male in the church, and they were assigned families. I say to spy on, but they were assigned families to visit and minister to. And so my mom sent yeah, exactly. It's all spying. So my mom sent those people over to my house, and they're like, "We're here to see Lucy," and my husband just straight arms them right back out the door. And so, and he didn't do it in an unkind way. They were just really being pushy. And so, you know, having somebody that, you know, that like me doesn't divide God along party lines and is really open to the fact that, you know, there were many different religions before Christianity. And, you know, we can all often go down that rabbit hole of, you know, personal beliefs. But for me, what I teach my kids is there are a few core things about being libertarian. You know, the non-aggression principle, really huge in my world, especially trying to keep the siblings from killing each other. You know, and the just the baseline idea that it's all about your choice. You know, I may not agree with your choices. I may not agree with what you believe, but I'm going to defend your right to believe them, even if you're my child and you believe something different than me. And, you know, we are in a buffet of ideas. So you know, there are people that it's hard to say, but genuinely believe they're libertarians that are like universal income libertarians. I think they got that part wrong, but if they've got the NAP right, if they've got the Constitution right, kudos if they know about the Articles of Confederation and why that was better than the Constitution, but that's cool too, wherever you are along the spectrum. When I was younger, I was very much like, we're libertarians and you got to go all the way to Hawaii with me. Like, you got to get on the bus, you got to make it through Kansas, all the way to LA, get on a freaking boat, all the way to Hawaii. And if you don't do that, you're not a real libertarian. And now I'm like, you know what? We're in Indiana. So if you can make it all the way to Kansas and you got to get off, man, that's cool. Just don't try and, so it's all good.
I've definitely started doing that as well as so in 2007, I volunteered on the Ron Paul campaign, and I was like, I did so with I was like, I disagree with him on immigration and abortion, but he's doing pretty well, and I'm just going to, support him. And it was funny because at the time I was also kind of in one of my purest stages of if you don't if you're not a NAP anarchist, basically, you're impure.
Yeah, I'm an
really,
anarchist.
I was doing both, these things were happening simultaneously, which might have been, my own cognitive dissonance. But I was like Ron Paul, and then when that didn't work out, I was like, okay, well, the LP is going to give me, a nice, properly libertarian person, and then they nominated Bob Barr, and I was furious. And
so was everybody else.
Yeah, so I was furious about it. I had and I was like, what the hell? And it was this thing though, I was in this fuck this. I was very I don't want anything to do with the party for a little while. So I stepped down as vice chair of the LPNH. I was like, I'm good, thanks. This was quite enough. And I stepped away for a year or two. And I mean, I was still a libertarian. I would still describe myself as a libertarian, but I was like, I'm not doing activism anymore. You don't deserve me. And
yes, exactly.
Then I really I started to, slide back into it. And part of it was that I didn't just do LP stuff, but I got, involved in, anti-war and Cato and Students for Liberty popped up. And I was like, whoa, that's, there's a lot of cool things going on that are not LP specific. And
yes.
And then and in that way, it's cool. There's a bunch of young people that you have, a lot of people, young or otherwise, who are, they're getting on the train, and they might not be following me all the way to Hawaii, but they're, the train that goes to Hawaii.
I'm going to get out and swim if I have to. Damn it, I'm getting there all the way.
But so what I've started doing, and I'm really adamant about this, and it happens a lot because I'm in the Libertarian Party, I'm very active, and I argue with people constantly who join the LP and want to change something about it. And there's been there's always people like that, but and I used to be really hostile. I'm like, fuck you, this isn't your party. I used to be really, really worse about it. And now what I say is I go welcome to the Libertarian Party. I'm glad you're here. And on this issue, you're not a libertarian, but it's okay. You're still a libertarian. You're just on this issue, you're less of a libertarian. And I've started saying that because it makes it's I still get to be man, you're not really a pure libertarian. I still get to do it. It's still emotionally, gratifying to me. But it's also it's recognizing that, if you agree with 90% of my party platform, why would I kick you out just because we have a difference of opinion about abortion rights?
Right.
If you agree with that, 80% of my platform, if you agree with 50% of my platform,
exactly, that's a win.
This is a big thing that I've been thinking about in terms of conversion efforts, and also not just conversion efforts, but also engagement of women in the party and anything else.
Yes.
But engagement of women in the party and just generally talking about libertarianism is that libertarians tend to take a really all or nothing approach. Here I am, I'm here. Here's the book of serfdom, and it's we have to convert you all the way. It's not just hey, do you believe the government is bad and you'd like to look at some other solutions? It's you must obey the NAP, and it gets so intense, and it scares a lot of people off. And what's really ironic is that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, not that I want to emulate them, except for their success, is
right.
The Republican Party and the Democratic Party have an entire slew of supporters that have nothing to do with party activism. They are just, oh yeah, I'm a casual Republican, I'm a casual Democrat. And those are the people that count on to vote for them even without activism. And here in the libertarian movement, we actually need to cultivate more acceptance of casual passive activists.
Yes.
So casual passive libertarians. you don't have to agree with me entirely. Like, hey, you know, does this idea interest you? Like, cool. Like, you know, like, I'd love it if you'd vote for my candidates. Oh, okay, you're feeling really strongly about, like, you're in a swing state and you need to vote for Biden or Trump or whatever. I wish you wouldn't. Like, here's Joe Jorgensen. Consider it if you will. I'd love, you know, for you to do that. But would you consider supporting, like, the down ballot libertarians in the meantime? And I've got lots of friends who go, you know what? Yeah, I'm happy to support down ballot libertarians because I don't think that race is important or whatever. And, like, I just, you know, you meet people where they are, and you accept the fact that, like, passive support, where they don't go and do the activism, they don't go and, like, and, you know, they're not collecting signatures, and they're not, you know, like, they're not getting on podcasts and talking about this shit. It's okay. Like, we need the people who just go out and vote for us. And those people don't have to be convinced 100%. They just need to be not abused for not believing us 100%. And so often, like, fellow libertarians, like, abuse people for not agreeing with them 100%. I mean, I mean it in a, you know, in a just like in a nonviolent and verbal way, but I see it all the time. Like, even in the Joe Jorgensen group, like, I'm on the Joe Jorgensen group, and like, people will be like, oh, hi, I'm new to libertarianism. I'm so excited to vote. This is my first year voting. Or, you know, I'm so, like, I was an apathetic person and now I'm voting for Joe Jorgensen, you know, a woman, you know, 100 years after women got the right to vote. Like, they're excited. And then they go, like, but I'm curious what libertarians feel about this issue. And, like, people will just go after them.
Terrible.
They'll be like, well, then you're not a libertarian. It's like, fucking shut the fuck up. Like, stop.
Well, it is so ridiculous because, you know, we're here to, and maybe I just see this as like a giant sales call or evangelism effort, but we've got to build on the commonalities, and we've got to recognize that we have allies that don't have to have a libertarian label. One of my friends, after she read The Creature from Jekyll Island, she was, and I don't know how I missed this, G. Edward Griffin came to Indiana and was giving lectures, and I missed this somehow. And, you know, he said, you know, who is here, you know, concerned about leaving their kids, you know, a legacy? And, you know, if you got your tax planning and your life insurance and all that, and a fair number of people raised their hand. And he said, why don't we leave them liberty? How about you leave your kids freedom? All kinds of people across the political spectrum there. And we should be thinking about that. You know, when I think about religion, I think about the hardline libertarians, because I'm a straight up anarchist. I mean, voluntarist, anarchist, fuck you, I own me. As my husband would say, I own me, motherfucker. He's a little bit more animated than I am. He would have been a lot of fun to have on here. But he would have had to, like, well, I mean, you don't have to bleep this, but you would normally have to. What really offends me more than anything else is I grew up in a religion like a lot of people do, regardless of what your religion is, where, like, there's this set of beliefs. And if you declare or accept a label upon yourself, all of a sudden you have to have every single thing in that book. You have to believe the way somebody else wrote it. Well, fuck that. You know, I can be a libertarian and I can disagree with, well, I would probably never disagree with Mary Ruwart. She's like my favorite, but let's pretend that I did. So, you know, maybe I disagree with her on her prison policy, you know, that there shouldn't be private prisons. That doesn't negate the other 99.9%. So why aren't we building on that? And I think we need to look at, you know, the idea of building on those commonalities and taking away that strictness, because we're all along a spectrum. And, you know, people, when they become libertarians, they don't even know that the NAP exists. They just know that something is very, very wrong, and they're willing to walk away from the wrong. And we need to give them something to step onto and to build from there.
No.
Okay. So you kind of hit, some of the reasons why people are like, they're not all in. They kind of, you know, they kind of put their foot in the wading pool, basically, to see, you know, what the response is, kind of. I mean, there were times when in the beginning, there were times when I first got into the party that I wanted to leave because I couldn't believe some of the stuff that I was hearing. Okay. And this was like in the middle of, I don't know where you guys live, but out in Colorado, there was like this rise of neo-Nazism, white supremacy, militia groups and stuff like that. And I went to a couple of Martin Luther King Day marches, and off to your left in an adjacent park, you have like 15 Klansmen, just trashing the poor guy. So, and his legacy. So, and I had one of my best friends at the time, a female, got trampled by a bunch of gangbangers because they thought she was one of them, but she wasn't. Okay, so there were a lot of turmoil, and in fact, the local newspaper, the Rocky Mountain News, which is defunct right now, the Rocky Mountain News did a hit piece on the Libertarian Party saying that, they're extremists and stuff like that. They're one of the reasons why we have this rise in, militia groups and stuff like that. And this is like before the internet really, before the internet's been around, but like only like maybe 1% of the population knew about it even. So, so you got everything given to you by the TV, newspapers, magazines and stuff like that. So there was a time when I stepped away because I've noticed a lot of libertarians that weren't libertarian type. They were like, oh yeah, the government sucks and all that, but black people need to go back to Africa type.
Oh man, okay? That sucks.
Or stuff like that. And I remember there was a time when I went to LP Denver meeting, and two black guys. It was during election year. Actually, it was when Andre Maru was the nominee, and two black guys come in, and we're like, oh, I was like, oh, great, they're thinking about learning a little bit more about the LP, and some dude comes up to him and says, we don't believe in affirmative action, right?
What the fuck?
The first thing they go, hey, walk in the door. Like, let me say this to you.
My mouth dropped. I was just like,
talk about no social skills.
I was like, and that's the thing that I think scares a lot of, and like I said, I'm married. I don't have to worry about this per se. Okay. But I think this is one of the reasons why the ladies and minorities, and I'm doing a show next week on, minorities in the LP,
right.
Are afraid to join or even test those waters to become libertarians because they see what libertarians are doing to themselves and others. So we have and I'm seeing that it might be like 20% of it, 80% of the people, they're cool. All right, they'll stick up for me, whatever. But like 20% of them are like, are you really a libertarian or not? You don't respect other people, and isn't that one of the core, basis of libertarianism is like respect, mutual respect for each other. So, and like I said, over the last, since the advent of social media and stuff, it's gotten worse because now it's no longer behind you, is actually in your face type. So, you know what I mean? So, and I sympathize with the ladies, that are that some of them have been just abused in a way by certain people. But I think that's one of the reasons why we don't have more, is because they see that they're like, oh, I was going to be a libertarian, but you know what? Screw you. I'm going to go back being a Democrat or Republican because, if I want abuse, I'll go somewhere else and get it, So
at least they'll be abused by potential winners.
It's disappointing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to, instead of being abused by losers, I'm going to be abused by winners. So I don't know. And I hear stories at least 2 or 3 times a month about it, and it disheartens me because I'd like to see more ladies, especially I'm seeing it from a perspective like the new Zoomers or late millennials and Zoomers, because I want my son to marry a libertarian girl one day.
Hey, I got a couple. They're good looking, but they got big personalities. So, you know, you can
become a
stalk
dating
my
show
Facebook.
where you like you pawn your children
Hey,
off.
you know,
Uh-huh.
whatever, you know. So I don't know. How do you how do we reconcile this?
You know, that is really interesting, and I'm so sorry you experienced that, because I'm I'm a middle-aged white woman with a whole bunch of kids growing up in Indiana. Like, I don't experience anything like what you experienced. And so I don't want to say that I'm blind to it, because I try and notice those things when they happen and to take a stand personally against them. And people in leadership have to have their eyes open. They have to be aware of when those things happen, because someone in leadership should have stepped in and just made a virtual fool out of somebody that would say something that's that foolish. So I can speak to the early 90s when my husband and I were first married, and we used to go to God and government classes, which is pretty cool. We were part of the militia movement, which was predominantly white. Well, of course, where I lived was too, so I don't know that that's. But anyway, it reminded me of a story. We had a gentleman come in and speak. Really dynamic guy, happened to be a black guy from Ohio. His name was J.J. Johnson, and
Who wound up marrying Nancy Lord, because I met them in 2004
oh,
in
really?
Atlanta.
Okay,
I know
cool.
JJ.
Well, this is a good JJ story. So, what I understood to happen is that JJ had been invited on to Phil Donahue, and they didn't know that he was black, and so as a result, that was like a big bomb that got dropped, that Phil Donahue tried to play the race card and couldn't. But JJ
Right.
came to our local militia group and spoke, and he called us out. So he's like, okay, he said, if you guys want to really take back this country, you've got to go down into the hood. You got to go down to the ghetto. And you've got to be willing to go door to door and to make friends with your neighbors and to bring people into the movement of color, of all races, because we are all fighting tyranny together. And, you know, there was a little bit of grumbling in the crowd. We did have some racists in that group. That's why my husband and I left. I could tell you a couple of stories. One which I will tell you in a second because it's freaking funny. But JJ sat up there and he said, he basically said, look, white people, you think you're going to take on the biggest, baddest government with the biggest military that has ever been in existence, and you're afraid to go down and walk through the hood? Like, you're delusional.
Yeah.
So he was really cool. But the good militia story I have is we had this one totally delusional guy, and he was a large reason why we left, because we were looking for friendships, for people that were very strong in the Second Amendment, that, you know, when the kinds of things that are happening right now are happening, that you'd have a group of people that if, you know, CPS came to your house, that they would all come and show up, you know, or something. But this particular guy was so freaking delusional. He had sniper classes because he wanted to teach people how they could shoot and not get shot back at. And it's like, that's fucking delusional. But the reason that we left, and I have to give props to my husband, Doran, because he's the one that tied this guy up in logical knots. This guy is in front of a room full of, you know, very devout evangelical type Christians who also have to be militia members, and gets this guy to admit that he wouldn't vote for Jesus because Jesus was a Jew. And this guy was like totally anti-Semitic. And so I was like, okay, tap out. I'm done. See you later.
Wow.
And there were also a couple of agent provocateurs that were in that group, but we knew who they were. I don't know if other people knew who they were, but we always have to be aware of those sorts of things. And, you know, like JJ said, if you're not willing to go down to the hood, you think you're going to take on the baddest government that's ever existed, you're freaking delusional.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I at first I was not going to volunteer on the Jorgensen campaign, because I was just like, I don't know. But when Spike Cohen went to Cincinnati or Columbus and talked to those BLM people, okay,
yep.
And then they wound up endorsing him, I was just like, we actually have a presidential ticket that's actually reaching out to Black people.
Right.
I was just like,
crazy. What a crazy concept.
And I saw the video. I was like, I'm on board. Thank you, Spike. Yep. You know, I'm on board. So it was great. And that's when I hopped on the Jorgensen campaign. So
that is fantastic. Getting out of your comfort zone, obviously super important, and having those frank conversations.
To be fair,
Because-
Spike's comfort zone is talking to people about like
Exactly.
like Spike's comfort zone is being out of his comfort zone and talking to new people about liberty. Like that's what's wonderful about Spike.
Yeah, my kids make fun of me because, you know, here I am. I'm 49. I'm almost 50 years old, and my oldest daughter, gosh, she's just such a brilliant child, and she's like 29, has 2 kids of her own now. But I came home and I was so excited because I got to leave the house by myself, which sometimes doesn't happen. And I actually went to the goat farm because I've been planning on going there, and I got to see the goats play. And I there was like 3 or 4 people that I talked to, and of course I'm best friends with all of them now because I'm just that sort of person. And my daughter's like, "Oh, you just really had yourself an adventure today, didn't you, Mom?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did. You know, I met all these awesome people and got to play with the goats."
That's awesome. Chris, how are we doing on time? Because I had other things to say, but I realized we're on an hour, so I wanted to check in with you.
Oh, go ahead. We can go a couple, another 10 or 15 minutes.
Bring it home.
You guys are interesting. I like you both. And go right. I love what you're saying. So awesome. Go right ahead.
I wanted to hop back to your comment about like when, you know, like those 2 black guys walked into a libertarian event and like somebody just walks up and is like, well, we don't believe in affirmative action. Because like that like right there is one of the most common reasons that I see like problem one getting minorities involved, but getting like women involved is like
Yes.
How many times I have seen like a woman who's like kind of curious and, you know, she read the platform, it sounded interesting, like, oh, she, you know, checked out our candidate, whatever. And so like she shows up at a libertarian event and somebody decides to gatekeep and like, and so they, you know, like, hey, just so you know, we're not fond of feminists here. Like, what? like you know, like I get that all the time. Like a woman walks in and for whatever reason, they assume that she's a feminist and that there's a problem with that. And so then they like want to mention to her, just so you know, like, oh, welcome. Yeah, we're not feminists here. Or like we don't have any use for your like, you know, leftism. It's like, why do you assume that she's a leftist because she's female? And 2, like why is the feminine, like what the fuck? Like and even if you're not a feminist, like I mean you could be like an anti-feminist woman and be like, oh great, you know, but like even if you're
I'd still
not
be offended.
like you know, that's the thing. It's like most of them would be like, what the hell? Like most people with any kind of social sense would be like, this is what the hell. And I see it all the time, so first off, you'll see like for whatever reason they decide to pick up the social issues. They're like woman walks in, she's like, oh cool, libertarianism, this is great. And then like immediately some guy is reminding her that we don't believe in public education or whatever. Like it's like, wow, like why are you starting with like things you think she'll disagree on? And it's usually very gendered, like education or something.
Abortion.
Something,
they always have to bring up abortion.
And then there's also like this kind of, oh, look, you're a woman and you're here. That's great. Because, you know, most women aren't interested in this thing. And it's like, what the fuck, dude? Like, shut the fuck up. Because that's another thing I get all the time I appreciate having conversations about why there aren't more women in the libertarian movement. But like, one of the reasons is one, I think there are more women passively interested in liberty than we give credit for, because if you actually look at some of the libertarian like news organizations, at one point I looked at the Libertarian Republic had a 39% female readership. So like 40% female readership. That there aren't 47%, like 40%. Yeah. So it's not 40% of like women in the liberty movement, but you know, like 40% of the readers of the Libertarian Republic were like are female, which means that that's a large interest. And in fact, most online publications of any political sway are more read by men than by women anyway. Like the only one that like there's like Mother Jones is one of the few that has more female readership than male, or Jezebel, or things like that. But so it's like it's this interesting thing because you have like women engaging and being interested, and then men telling them, oh, like, you're normally not interested, so you're weird. Like, so first you're weird, you're novel, we're gonna treat you like we're gonna treat you like a novel specimen. And then the assumptions about what they're interested in or why they give a shit about liberty. And it's just so, sometimes it's like so disheartening, like okay, let's call more attention to this issue, or why don't we just like accept, like let this woman tell us what she's into and why she became a libertarian, and then just go, that's awesome, welcome to the fold. And then, you know, when she goes, oh wow, like I wish there were more women in leadership or whatever, guess what? Ladies of Liberty Alliance is trying to help coach more female libertarian women to be in leadership positions. Like yes. That's one of the things that Lola does. And like I'm a board member of Feminists for Liberty, where we talk about libertarian issues through a feminist lens and feminist issues through a libertarian lens, because we feel like there need to be those conversations about these things that, like, you know, feminists are identifying, or that libertarians are identifying, but not like considering from a feminist perspective. And we want to take those things and give people an opportunity to understand where these things can meet and where they can't. Like there's like, have a conversation. But instead, there's like a lot of guys that will just suddenly like walk in and be like, hey, I'm gatekeeping this thing. And like, if you don't agree 100%, or I'm going to make some really obnoxious assumptions about what you believe and what you think, so that you suddenly feel lesser than. Like, why?
Right.
And it's so unfortunate, because, like, you know, if I bring women in all the time. And here's the thing. So I live in Los Angeles now. And so Judd and I, prior to COVID, obviously, because now COVID is making it very difficult. But prior to COVID, we would host events all the time at our house. And like, most of our social circle is not libertarians. Like, we have a ton of libertarian followers and friends. Like, don't get me wrong, I have lots of libertarian friends. But like, I have friends in, you know, in the goth scene. I have friends in the Hollywood scene. I have friends who just, you know, like, I know them from cannabis industry, all these different things. And we throw mixers and get-togethers, and all sorts of people come. And there's like, you know, like young women in cute little cocktail dresses, and they're just like, oh my God, I'm at a Hollywood party. And like, and there's all like the vast majority of them have no interest in politics whatsoever. And what we used to do is we would host a speaker. And not make an event around a speaker, but be like, hey, you're going to come to this event, and there's going to be someone from Students for Sensible Drug Policy, or Nathaniel Brannon is going to come speak, or we had Alexander McCoben from SFL come, or we've had Gary Johnson, we've had both Tulsi Gabbard and Rand Paul, just to mix it up.
That's cool.
But like we've had these people come and speak. We had Robert Greene, who wrote the 48 Laws of Power, and like,
oh man, that's on my bucket list.
Right.
To meet him.
So the thing is like we invite people to socialize and have a good time, and it's not political in any way. And then we say like, hey, for 10 minutes, you're going to listen to the speaker. And so Alexander McCoben gets up, and he's so eloquent. He talks about SFL, and he's like, hey, everybody, it's nice to meet you all. And it's a fundraiser. Technically, like, he is up for taking donations from people, but people want to hear what he's about. So he goes, we're trying to get young people engaged in libertarian politics, in liberty politics. We want to make the world a freer place. He doesn't use the word libertarian. He talks about liberty. He talks about making the world a freer place. He talks about, like, so he starts talking about like a couple of things they're doing as an organization. And he's like, if you'd like to support us, if you'd like to check out more, you know, studentsforliberty.org, you know, if you'd like to donate, it's a 401c3, whatever, like, you know, it's a nonprofit organization. And then he included like somebody was like teasing a libertarian in the crowd. Like, most of the crowd was not libertarian. A libertarian in the crowd jokingly, to create tension and hostility, said like, but what about the roads? And like, they made that as a joke to like, but suddenly now why the fuck is this now a conversation about the roads, right? And so then like another friend of ours who's more on the like left, like a couple people are just kind of like, what? Well, like, you know, suddenly engaged in this period of like this thing of dissonance, this thing of like potential disagreement. And Alexander McCoben, like, he just said, you know what? Like, I think there's a lot of things we got to deal with before we deal with the road. So if you're on the same page as me up till then, we got a long journey together before we get to that point. And
masterful.
And it was so beautifully done, because it just, you know, it was like, hey, like, I'm not going to distract a blossoming friendship between us, potentially with donations involved, by you know, distracting with like an issue that like trust me, there's like so many things we're going to deal with before we get to roads. Like, and I loved that. And he's such a good communicator of those things. And I just wish so many more people would take like that and go, oh, you know, like when I'm talking to someone and they go like, well, what about this thing? And it's like, you know, we might have some disagreement there. I'd love to talk to you about that. But, but and then just like rephrasing things in a way, you don't have to water down the principles. You don't have to change what, libertarians believe. You just have to like sell it a little bit. You just have to go like, well, do you believe, you don't have to say like, I want to unfund all government education. Like you just say like, do you believe that like students and students and parents should be getting like the best education for their children possible? Because that's what I believe. Like, I believe that like education is such an important thing. Do you value education? Yes. Oh, look, we're on the same page there. Like, do you think that maybe we should make sure that like communities have the resources to take care of their children and better educate them? Yeah. Okay, cool. We agree there. Like, we're going to disagree about, teachers unions and other shit, but like, let's like put us on the same side and then discuss how like libertarian ideas are better for accomplishing that goal that we both share. I want an educated populace. I want people to have healthcare. I don't want to do it via government, but we have to start, it's a bridge, right? And you put people, you make sure they're on the same side as you in these respects, in the values aspect. And then you talk about policy. And I feel like so many people fail to do that in the libertarian space. And it's just unfortunate because there's like so much opportunity. And that's why Spike Cohen's fucking awesome, because he goes and says, hey, we also believe that like government, the police power and brutality is like a fucking problem. And like, I'm with you. And here are some real solutions we want to do. And they're like, whoa, Democrats haven't given us these solutions. Thank you so much, man.
Right.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
That was my rant.
I loved it. Loved your rant.
It's a good rant. I loved it. I loved it. And that's like I said, these podcasts that I'm doing, hopefully they'll be preserved to where, people could say, you know what, Chris Bennett talked about that in episode 2, or Chris Bennett talked about that in episode 8, or, whatever, because I want it to be referenced to where, hey, these are everyday libertarians talking about, ways to improve the landscape, basically. So I appreciate you ladies being on. It's been great. Any final words before I hit that live button off?
Let's see. Where do people find you? How do people know? Like,
oh gosh. I'm always spending too much time on Facebook arguing with people, so you can always find me there or at lucyforliberty.com. Actually, I think that's the website that's active. I've had so many different ones, but you can find me there. And you know what I want to tell people is be a friend, go make a friend, and bring your friends some good ideas that make us all more free. Let's leave freedom to our children.
Sounds good.
Yes. Awesome. My final thought is so people can find me on avens.me, avens.me is my website, and that links you to my Facebook, Avens O'Brien, my Twitter handle, Avens O'Brien, my Instagram handle, Avens O'Brien. I'm a brand. That's what I do. So you can find me there if you'd like to check me out and what I have to say, because I rant a lot and I like to consider myself a Facebook agitator. But
I never knew there was a name for it. Damn, now I know what I am.
There you go. Facebook agitation for the win. My final thought on this, especially in context of libertarianism, but in context of the world, like it's an interesting thing right now, because a lot of times I like to view libertarianism and also recognize its context within the microcosm, like the whole world, right? And one of the things that I didn't get to talking about here that I was going to was, in some ways, a lot of people will talk about hostility to women in the liberty universe, and people being, really, really crude and really brash, and really there are definitely some people, especially I would say in the alt-right, who are very negative towards women, and there's sometimes they're not the same. Alt-right and libertarian are not remotely the same, but sometimes there's a little cross-pollination because of like organizations or people or individuals that kind of skirt, like a Venn diagram between them. But
my life is a Venn diagram.
But the thing is that I look at the world right now, and I'm unfailingly optimistic. And a lot of people are like, oh, but there's all this bad stuff happening. 2020 sucks, and COVID, and these things are happening, right? But even with various draconian government measures and various terrible things that are happening, in many ways, we've never been freer. And I know that's a really ironic thing to say when I'm living in California and I have to wear a mask when I leave my house to go to the grocery store. But the fact is, you know, like it's never been a better time to be a woman who is the, you know, who wants to pursue a career instead of yet having children, like,
Yes.
And it's never been a better time to be gay and wanting to get married and have babies and adopt
Yes.
children. It's never been a better time to be a person of color. Like I'm not saying at all that everything's hunky dory, but the like arc of civilization of love is like, I feel like we are moving towards freedom. We are moving even in the little ways in which we backslide. There's no time that I'd rather be alive than now. There's no time that I'd rather be female than now. There's no time that I'd rather be bisexual than now. There's no time that I'd rather be a woman who has prioritized my career but eventually wants to have children than now. And so, you know, when I listen to like other female activists in the libertarian space, and, you know, like there's lots of criticism to be had, and there's lots of criticism to be had about the whole spectrum of what's going on in the world. But like things are like there are times that things are shitty, and they're shitty individually or they're shitty culturally, but like things are great. Like things are like in the broad context of the universe, like we're doing pretty damn well, and like they can always be better, and we should never forget that they can be better, but they are better than they were, and that's something to appreciate and to like and to pull, you know, to pulse energy from, because it's like, yes, okay, we are in forward momentum, we are moving towards something. You know, right now, like we have these great things that are happening, and then simultaneously there's, you know, there's louder and more obnoxious people on the internet telling us shitty things. Like there's more avenues in which people can be shitty to each other, but also like there's so many ways in which we are blessed to be good to each other. You know, like social media can be filled with people going, "You're a cunt," and they can also be filled with people going, "I love you, and even though I've never met you, I want to send you money because your, you know, animal died, and I want to help you with funeral costs." Like people do such nice things for each other, and we sometimes focus on the negative instead of focusing on the positive. So, like for women in the liberty movement or anyone in the liberty movement feeling discouraged, like there's no better time to be who we are than now. And like, let's fucking enjoy, like always strive for better, but don't forget to appreciate where you are, because it'll like that appreciation and that gratefulness for it will also make you better at realizing what else needs to be done, and give you that energy and those spoons to do it, you know, to go, let's now, like we've gotten here, you know, by 1 to 10, we're at 5, we need to get to 7, we can do this. Like, but let's not forget we got to 5, and we're working on it, we're getting better. So that's my happy thought to end the occasion.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, ladies, for being on. I appreciate it, and hopefully somewhere in the future we can have you back, and I would appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
See ya. Bye.
Chris Bennett signing off.